Kai Thorne's last memory was a Chicago kitchen. Now he's trapped in Eldoria, where plants hunt like predators and cultists whisper of an ancient hunger. Armed only with his chef's knife and instincts sharpened by dinner rushes, he must master culinary magic or become the next meal. The spice wilds pulse with danger, villages teeter on famine, and a floating city of merchants hides deadly secrets. But the greatest threat isn't the monsters, it's the Devourer, a force that consumes worlds, and it's tasted Kai's otherworldly power. To survive, he'll need more than recipes. He'll need to forge a legend with every dish, or die as the apocalypse's appetizer. Before we continue our quest, press subscribe to join our Adventurers Guild and start per se to activate crystal ball notifications. The pixelated realms hold countless secrets, and this dungeon is just the beginning. If you enjoy epic boss battles, legendary loot drops and quests no NPC would dare assign, stay in our party, because this adventure is about to level up. The knife sliced through air as Kai Thorne's eyes snapped open to unfamiliar emerald canopy. Not Chicago, not his kitchen. The sous chef scrambled upright, heart hammering against his ribs, while alien scents, spicy, floral, dangerous, flooded his senses. Last memory, that ancient cookbook, the recipe with strange symbols, then blinding light. Steel glinted in his white-knuckled grip, his chef's knife, thankfully. Vines writhed across the forest floor with unsettling purpose as Kai backed against a massive tree trunk, its bark pulsing with faint blue luminescence. "Hello!" His voice sounded small beneath the rustling canopy. Nothing human answered, but something shrill screamed from the underbrush. Culinary instinct took over as a whip-like tendril lashed toward his face. Kai's knife struck true, the blade slicing clean through with unexpected ease. The severed plant sizzled against metal. The knife glowed briefly with amber energy. Impossible. Yet as three more tendrils attacked, Kai moved with practiced precision, the same economy of motion that had served him through countless dinner rushes. The wild plant retreated, leaving behind severed pieces that smelled oddly of cinnamon and copper. Survival now, questions later. Kai gathered dry wood, struck sparks with the knife's spine against stone. The fire burned too bright, too quick, flames, tinged with purple. From his pack he salvaged garlic and salt, kitchen essentials he'd carried to the test kitchen that morning. When sprinkled into the flames, they formed a protective circle of scented smoke. As darkness fell, a small fox-like creature with silver-tipped ears crept toward his campfire. Hungry too, Kai tossed a morsel of jerky. The creature, Kai named, ate pepper on the spot, sniffed cautiously, then devoured the offering. Strange, its fur brightened momentarily, glowing like the embers. Before dawn, voices jolted Kai awake. Black-robed figures moved through distant trees, harvesting glowing plants with cruel efficiency. One spotted him, jabbing a finger. The other-worlder, the one who threatens the eternal hunger. Kai grabbed his knife as Pepper bristled beside him. The blade hummed with energy, responding to his fear. The cultists charged forward, curved daggers drawn. Somewhere deep inside, culinary knowledge crystallized into survival instinct. Kai flung his remaining salt directly into the flames. The fire erupted into a wall of searing heat that sent the attackers retreating with howls of rage. Kai didn't wait for their return. With Pepper guiding him toward what smelled like water, the chef fled deeper into the spice wilds, still clutching his knife, somehow knowing it was more than a kitchen tool in this strange new world of Eldoria. Pepper's silver-tipped ears twitched forward as they crested the ridge. Below, thatched roofs nestled against the forest edge, civilization, or something like it. The creature darted ahead, pausing to ensure Kai followed. 3 days of foraging had taught the chef to trust his guide's instincts about what plants burned, what healed, what nourished. His culinary senses had sharpened, detecting subtle energies in each root and leaf. The village stirred with morning activity as Kai observed from the tree line, his clothes tattered but knife still gleaming. Villagers with skin in earthy tones prepared food in communal fire pits, their hands occasionally glowing as ingredients transformed. Magic, but practical, embedded in everyday sustenance. A child's scream pierced the air as a creature, something like a wolf but with too many legs, burst from the underbrush, heading straight toward a small girl. Without thinking, Kai sprinted forward. His knife found his hand as muscle memory from countless prep shifts took over. "Hey!" he shouted, drawing the beast's attention. Desperation sparked innovation. Kai reached into his pocket for the bright red spice pods Pepper had led him to yesterday. He crushed them between his fingers and flung the powder directly into the creature's eyes. The reaction defied everything. He knew about chemistry. The spice ignited on contact, creating a blinding flash that sent the beast howling back into the forest. The knife in his hand hummed with energy, resonating with his racing heart. The village defenders circled him with spears leveled, but the girl's mother stepped forward, gesturing toward a communal cooking pot. Understanding transcended language. Kai nodded, approached the bubbling stew and inhaled deeply. His chef's instincts catalogued unfamiliar ingredients, sensed imbalances. He reached for his salvaged salt pouch, adding a precise pinch, then gestured toward nearby herbs. Permission granted with cautious nods. When the transformed stew was distributed, those who ate stood straighter, their skin taking on a subtle glow. A village defender lifted a heavy log one-handed, eyes widening in surprise. That night, as Kai demonstrated knife techniques to fascinated, onlookers' shadows moved at the village perimeter, creatures or people driven by unnatural hunger. The attack came with primal screams and glinting blades. Kai's latest culinary experiment, berries fermented with mineral dust, erupted like tiny bombs when flung at the attackers. As villagers fought with renewed strength from his enhanced meal, a tall woman with a bow observed from the shadows. After the battle she approached, her steps silent on packed earth. "I am Lyra Emberstrike," she said in halting words Kai somehow understood. "You cook with power untrained otherworlder. You will come to Aetheria. Answers await if you survive. The journey." Pepper circled the ranger's legs once, then returned to Kai's side. The chef looked at his knife, still humming with untapped potential. Whatever had brought him to Eldoria, his path forward now seemed clear. Tomorrow they would begin the journey to the Floating Markets of Aetheria, and perhaps the truth about why a Chicago sous chef had been summoned to a world where cooking was magic. The horizon disappeared into mist, then emerged as something impossible. Kai shielded his eyes, breath catching in his throat. Massive platforms of wood and stone hung suspended in open air, held aloft by enormous translucent bladders that captured sunlight like trapped rainbows. "The Floating Markets of Aetheria," Lyra announced, arms crossed over her leather-clad chest. "Where everything has a price, including trust." Pepper chittered excitedly, silver-tipped ears twitching toward the sense of exotic spices and roasting meats wafting down from above. The ascent via swaying rope bridges tested Kai's resolve, his knuckles white on hemp fibers as he fixed his gaze upward rather than at the dizzying drop below. The market's first platform sprawled before them in organized chaos, vendors from a dozen races hawking wares beneath colored canopies that snapped in the high winds. Guards with insignia denoting the market's neutral status patrolled with spears that crackled with containment magic. "Violence brings immediate expulsion," Lyra muttered. "Straight down." A commotion erupted near a central cooking arena where a blue-skinned vendor berated a small crowd. "No one dares challenge the great Malvus," the cook boomed. "My 7-spice victory stew remains undefeated." Something fierce and competitive stirred in Kai's chest, the same fire that had driven him through culinary school and into Chicago's cutthroat restaurant scene. Before he could reconsider, he stepped forward. "I'll challenge you." The crowd parted as Malvus's yellow eyes narrowed. "A human dares? With what coin do you back your challenge?" Kai's hand fell to his knife, his only possession of value. Lyra caught his wrist, subtly shaking her head. "I vouch for his skill," came a melodic voice from behind. A tall elven woman with silver hair stepped forward, her robes shimmering with arcane symbols. "I will cover his entry." The cooking battle became a blur of instinct and adaptation. Unfamiliar ingredients met techniques from two worlds, as Kai incorporated Eldorian spices into a modified risotto that had once earned him praise from his executive chef. The crowd gasped when he added what appeared to be toxic purple mushrooms, not realizing his chef's nose had detected their true nature, umami bombs that would transform with proper preparation. As the final dishes were presented, Malvis's confident smile faltered. Judges from various races sampled both offerings, their expressions shifting from curiosity to astonishment as they tasted Kai's creation. Victory was declared with surprised murmurs throughout the crowd. The celebration was short-lived. As Kai accepted his prize, a small pouch of rare spices, a customer at a nearby table clutched their throat, face contorting in pain. "Poison!" someone shouted. Chaos erupted as the victim's companions pointed accusingly at Kai. "The outsider brings death." The market guards converged, spears crackling. Lyra knocked an arrow while Pepper growled, fur standing on end. The silver-haired elf who had sponsored him stepped between Kai and the guards. "Nima Whisperwind of the Culinary Archives," she announced with authority. "This man is under my protection while we determine what really happened." She turned to Kai, voice lowered. "Your cooking techniques mirror ancient texts I've studied. This is no coincidence, Otherworlder. The Devourer's cult fears you, which means we have much to discuss, assuming we survive the next few minutes." Kai's knife hummed with energy as he assessed the rapidly deteriorating situation. Whatever had brought him to Eldoria, the stakes were clearly higher than just finding a way home. Moonlight filtered through the fabric roof of their rented stall, casting strange shadows across Kai's hastily scrawled recipe notes. The poisoning victim had survived thanks to his quick thinking, a neutralizing tincture created from market herbs with properties similar to activated charcoal. Still, tension permeated the floating platforms of Aetheria. Merchants glared as he passed their stalls. Guards shadowed his movements. "Your methods are instinctual yet precise," Nima observed, her silver hair shimmering as she examined his knife. "You perform magic without recognizing the patterns." Lyra returned from scouting, her expression grim. "Food is spoiling across the market, overnight as if time accelerates around it. People are going missing too." The ranger laid a map on the table. "And these symbols have appeared near affected areas." Kai stared at the crude markings. Spirals, ending in jagged teeth, the same symbol the cultists in the Spice Wilds had worn. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by a crash that sent Kai bolting upright. Shadows moved across their quarters as two figures rummaged through his belongings. His knife flew to his hand without conscious thought. "Looking for something?" The intruders spun, one flinging a pouch that burst into choking spores. Lyra's arrow whistled through the cloud, finding its mark with a wet thud. The surviving intruder fled, but not before Kai glimpsed the spiral tooth emblem embroidered on their sleeve. By morning, word spread of a grand feast planned for the market's central platform, a gesture of unity from the merchant council to calm rising fears. Nima's expression darkened at the news. Perfect cover for something worse. Her prediction proved accurate when, midway through preparations, Kai noticed subtle signs of tampering, ingredient substitutions, altered cooking temperatures, containers switched. Someone was methodically sabotaging every dish. With the feast hours away, Kai rallied his companions. "We need to create replacement dishes for everything." His hands moved in a blur, directing Lyra's precision and Nima's knowledge of magical properties as they worked to salvage the feast. Pepper proved unexpectedly useful, his heightened senses detecting tainted ingredients. When the feast began, Kai vigilantly patrolled the serving tables until a commotion erupted across the platform. Despite their efforts, someone had smuggled in a contaminated wine cask. Guests clutched their heads as hallucinatory magic took hold. Merchants saw rivals as monsters. Guards perceived threats in every shadow. There, Lyra's keen eyes spotted a hooded figure slipping away from the chaos. Their pursuit led through increasingly narrow walkways between market stalls until they cornered the saboteur against a platform edge. The cultist smiled, teeth unnaturally sharp. "The Devourer knows you now, Otherworld Chef. Your knowledge is ancient yet new, dangerous." Before they could apprehend him, the cultist stepped backward off the platform, falling into the mists below without a scream. That night, As they treated affected feast-goers with countering elixirs, Kai recorded new recipes in his growing notebook. Combat preparations designed for portability and specific effects. "We've been marked," Lyra warned as they observed, market guards posting their descriptions at platform entrances. "By morning we'll be blamed for everything." Nima nodded grimly. "The Iron Road to Ironhaven is our only option now. My contacts there might help us understand what the Devourer truly wants with you." As they gathered their meager supplies, Kai felt the weight of his knife against his hip, heavier now with purpose. Whatever chef he had been in Chicago seemed increasingly distant compared to who he was becoming in Eldoria. Iron Road earned its name honestly, hard-packed red clay embedded with ore that sparked beneath boot heels and wagon wheels. Kai's calves burned with each trudging step as the floating markets of Aetheria dwindled to glimmering specks behind them. 3 more days to Ironhaven, Lyra muttered, arrow knocked but loose in her fingers. "If the warlord's patrols don't find us first." The contested territories stretched before them, rolling hills scarred by recent battles, skeletal trees marking where magic had gone wrong. Nima walked with one hand perpetually near her spell components, silver hair bound tightly beneath a traveler's hood. "The magic here feels wrong," she observed, consumed rather than channeled. Pepper darted ahead, returning with increasingly agitated yips until Lyra raised her fist for silence. Metal jangled over the next rise, armored scouts approaching fast. "No time to run," she hissed. Kai's mind raced through his limited options. The portable cooking kit he'd salvaged from Aetheria was too small for proper battle preparations, but perhaps— "I need 5 minutes," he whispered, already digging through his pack. Lyra and Nima exchanged dubious glances, but moved to defensive positions while Kai rapidly combined ingredients with practiced precision. Simple field chemistry became magic in his hands. Crushed berries mixed with reactive mineral salts he'd collected, smeared across arrow tips and knife edge. The patrol rounded the hill just as Kai finished. 8 raiders in patchwork armor bearing the insignia of the Fang warlord. Their leader's eyes widened at the sight of Nima's elven features. "Mage flesh brings good bounty," Steel sang as blades cleared scabbards. Lyra's treated arrow took the leader in the shoulder. On impact, it burst into caustic foam that ate through armor joints. The raider howled as his sword arm went limp. Kai's knife felt alive in his hand, its edge leaving glowing trails through air as he deflected a wild swing. Where his treated blade cut, flesh hissed and numbed. The ambush dissolved into retreat as the raiders dragged their incapacitated leader away, shouting promises of painful retribution. "We need shelter before they return with reinforcements," Nima said, already scanning the horizon. A waypoint inn appeared like salvation as dusk fell. The crossed axes stood at a fork in the Iron Road, its windows glowing with welcome warmth. Inside, tension thickened the air like rancid grease. 2 merchant caravans glared at each other, from opposite sides of the common room, one flying the red banners of the Fang warlord, the other displaying the black wolf of his rival. The innkeeper approached their table after serving watery stew. "You'll want gone by morning," she warned quietly. "Blood's coming with the dawn. These fools have been posturing for hours." Kai studied both merchant groups, noting their hollow-eyed exhaustion, the way they clutched dented cups with white knuckles. An idea, ridiculous, dangerous, formed in his mind. "May I use your kitchen?" The cooking demonstration began tentatively, curious glances as Kai prepared 2 distinct dishes, using his remaining ingredients. The fragrance drew first one merchant, then another, until representatives from both caravans watched with grudging interest. "In my world," Kai explained while chopping with hypnotic precision, "enemies sometimes become allies over shared meals." The dishes he prepared were simple but strategic, one spiced heavily to honor the aggressive Fang merchant's palate, the other subtly seasoned to appeal to the wolf caravan's more refined tastes. Yet both contained the same base ingredients, a point Kai emphasized as he served them. Initial suspicion gave way to reluctant appreciation, then animated discussion of trading routes as the magical properties of his cooking took effect, subtly calming tensions while enhancing clarity of thought. By midnight, the merchants had negotiated a temporary alliance against bandits plaguing both their masters. Lyra watched with newfound respect. "You fight differently than any warrior I've known," she said as they claimed corner pallets for sleep. "In a world of blades, you choose to transform rather than destroy." Dawn brought uneasy peace instead of bloodshed. As they resumed their journey toward Ironhaven, Nima walked beside Kai. "The ancient texts speak of battle chefs who could unite armies with their creations," she said thoughtfully. "I begin to understand why the Devourer fears you." Kai's hand fell to his knife, once just a tool for preparing ingredients, now something more. The road ahead shimmered with heat and danger, but for the first time since arriving in Eldoria, he felt a sense of purpose forming like a perfectly balanced sauce. "You've reached a save point. True adventurers always explore every path just like you. I've spent countless EXP creating this quest, from world building to sprite design, chiptune composition, and battle balancing. A simple like spell, subscribe, scroll or comment enchantment, grants me MP to keep creating these legendary adventures. What hidden bosses do you think lurk in the bonus dungeon? Type your strategies in the comments, because the secret ending might just change everything." You thought you knew about the final boss. Moonlight filtered through the fabric roof of their rented stall, casting strange shadows across Kai's hastily scrawled recipe notes. The poisoning victim had survived thanks to his quick thinking, a neutralizing tincture created from market herbs with properties similar to activated charcoal. Still, tension permeated the floating platforms of Aetheria. Merchants glared as he passed their stalls. Guards shadowed his movements. "Your methods are instinctual yet precise," Nima observed, her silver hair shimmering as she examined his knife. "You perform magic without recognizing the patterns." Lyra returned from scouting, her expression grim. "Food is spoiling across the market, overnight as if time accelerates around it. People are going missing too." The ranger laid a map on the table. "And these symbols have appeared near affected areas." Kai stared at the crude markings. Spirals, ending in jagged teeth, the same symbol the cultists in the Spice Wilds had worn. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by a crash that sent Kai bolting upright. Shadows moved across their quarters as two figures rummaged through his belongings. His knife flew to his hand without conscious thought. "Looking for something?" The intruders spun, one flinging a pouch that burst into choking spores. Lyra's arrow whistled through the cloud, finding its mark with a wet thud. The surviving intruder fled, but not before Kai glimpsed the spiral tooth emblem embroidered on their sleeve. By morning, word spread of a grand feast planned for the market's central platform, a gesture of unity from the merchant council to calm rising fears. Nima's expression darkened at the news. Perfect cover for something worse. Her prediction proved accurate when, midway through preparations, Kai noticed subtle signs of tampering, ingredient substitutions, altered cooking temperatures, containers switched. Someone was methodically sabotaging every dish. With the feast hours away, Kai rallied his companions. "We need to create replacement dishes for everything." His hands moved in a blur, directing Lyra's precision and Nima's knowledge of magical properties as they worked to salvage the feast. Pepper proved unexpectedly useful, his heightened senses detecting tainted ingredients. When the feast began, Kai vigilantly patrolled the serving tables until a commotion erupted across the platform. Despite their efforts, someone had smuggled in a contaminated wine cask. Guests clutched their heads as hallucinatory magic took hold. Merchants saw rivals as monsters. Guards perceived threats in every shadow. There, Lyra's keen eyes spotted a hooded figure slipping away from the chaos. Their pursuit led through increasingly narrow walkways between market stalls until they cornered the saboteur against a platform edge. The cultist smiled, teeth unnaturally sharp. "The Devourer knows you now, Otherworld Chef. Your knowledge is ancient yet new, dangerous." Before they could apprehend him, the cultist stepped backward off the platform, falling into the mists below without a scream. That night, as they treated affected feastgoers with countering elixirs, Kai recorded new recipes in his growing notebook. Combat preparations designed for portability and specific effects. "We've been marked," Lyra warned as they observed market guards posting their descriptions at platform entrances. By morning we'll be blamed for everything. Nima nodded grimly. The Iron Road to Ironhaven is our only option now. My contacts there might help us understand what the Devourer truly wants with you. As they gathered their meager supplies, Kai felt the weight of his knife against his hip, heavier now with purpose. Whatever chef he had been in Chicago seemed increasingly distant compared to who he was becoming in Eldoria. Iron Road earned its name honestly, hard-packed red clay embedded with ore that sparked beneath boot heels and wagon wheels. Kai's calves burned with each trudging step as the floating markets of Aetheria dwindled to glimmering specks behind them. 3 more days to Ironhaven, Lyra muttered, arrow knocked but loose in her fingers. If the warlord's patrols don't find us first. The contested territories stretched before them, rolling hills scarred by recent battles, skeletal trees marking where magic had gone wrong. Nima walked with one hand perpetually near her spell components, silver hair bound tightly beneath a traveler's hood. The magic here feels wrong, she observed, consumed rather than channeled. Pepper darted ahead, returning with increasingly agitated yips until Lyra raised her fist for silence. Metal jangled over the next rise, armored scouts, approaching fast. No time to run, she hissed. Kai's mind raced through his limited options. The portable cooking kit he'd salvaged from Aetheria was too small for proper battle preparations, but perhaps... I need 5 minutes, he whispered, already digging through his pack. Lyra and Nima exchanged dubious glances, but moved to defensive positions while Kai rapidly combined ingredients with practiced precision. Simple field chemistry became magic in his hands. Crushed berries mixed with reactive mineral salts he'd collected, smeared across arrow tips and knife edge. The patrol rounded the hill just as Kai finished. 8 raiders in patchwork armor bearing the insignia of the Fang warlord. Their leader's eyes widened at the sight of Nima's elven features. Mage flesh brings good bounty, Steel sang as blades cleared scabbards. Lyra's treated arrow took the leader in the shoulder. On impact, it burst into caustic foam that ate through armor joints. The raider howled as his sword arm went limp. Kai's knife felt alive in his hand, its edge leaving glowing trails through air as he deflected a wild swing. Where his treated blade cut, flesh hissed and numbed. The ambush dissolved into retreat as the raiders dragged their incapacitated leader away, shouting promises of painful retribution. "We need shelter before they return with reinforcements," Nima said, already scanning the horizon. A waypoint inn appeared like salvation as dusk fell. The crossed axes stood at a fork in the iron road, its windows glowing with welcome warmth. Inside, tension thickened the air like rancid grease. 2 merchant caravans glared at each other, from opposite sides of the common room, one flying the red banners of the Fang warlord, the other displaying the black wolf of his rival. The innkeeper approached their table after serving watery stew. "You'll want gone by morning," she warned quietly. "Blood's coming with the dawn. These fools have been posturing for hours." Kai studied both merchant groups, noting their hollow-eyed exhaustion, the way they clutched dented cups with white knuckles. An idea, ridiculous, dangerous, formed in his mind. "May I use your kitchen?" The cooking demonstration began tentatively, curious glances as Kai prepared 2 distinct dishes, using his remaining ingredients. The fragrance drew first one merchant, then another, until representatives from both caravans watched with grudging interest. "In my world," Kai explained while chopping with hypnotic precision, "enemies sometimes become allies over shared meals." The dishes he prepared were simple but strategic, one spiced heavily to honor the aggressive Fang merchant's palate, the other subtly seasoned to appeal to the wolf caravan's more refined tastes. Yet both contained the same base ingredients, a point Kai emphasized as he served them. Initial suspicion gave way to reluctant appreciation, then animated discussion of trading routes as the magical properties of his cooking took effect, subtly calming tensions while enhancing clarity of thought. By midnight, the merchants had negotiated a temporary alliance against bandits plaguing both their masters. Lyra watched with newfound respect. "You fight differently than any warrior I've known," she said as they claimed corner pallets for sleep. "In a world of blades, You choose to transform rather than destroy. Dawn brought uneasy peace instead of bloodshed. As they resumed their journey toward Ironhaven, Nima walked beside Kai. The ancient texts speak of battle chefs who could unite armies with their creations, she said thoughtfully. I begin to understand why the Devourer fears you. Kai's hand fell to his knife, once just a tool for preparing ingredients, now something more. The road ahead shimmered with heat and danger, but for the first time since arriving in Eldoria, he felt a sense of purpose forming like a perfectly balanced sauce. Steel met stone as knives chopped in rhythmic percussion across improvised preparation tables. The great feasting hall of Ironhaven, unused since the siege began, now hummed with purposeful activity. Dwarves from opposed factions worked side by side, traditional chefs alongside mining engineers, unified by Kai's audacious proposal, a feast to cleanse corruption and bind the community against deeper threats. The salt balance must be precise, Kai instructed a team processing fungal harvests. Too little won't neutralize the corruption, too much will render it inedible. Sweat dripped from his brow as he moved between stations, tasting, adjusting, guiding. Tormund had rallied his former smithing apprentices to craft specialized cooking implements, designed to Kai's specifications, vessels that could withstand the intense heat needed to break down corrupted matter. Nearby, Nima and a reluctant circle of dwarven runesmiths incorporated elven preservation symbols into serving platters. The preparations had not begun smoothly. Traditionalists rejected cooperation with the exile Ironheart. Progressives questioned ancient purification methods. The breaking point came when Master Grimbeard, leader of the Elder faction, publicly accused Kai of blasphemy against dwarven culinary traditions. You would have us consume that which grows in darkness, prepared by foreign hands? He had challenged, beard bristling with indignation. The hall had fallen silent until Tormund stepped forward, not with anger but with his life's work. Magnificent cooking vessels that married dwarven metallurgy with Kai's design requirements. Our traditions began with innovation, the smith had reminded his people. Before the first forge fire there was a dwarf brave enough to capture flame. The evening before the feast, crisis struck. Pepper's agitated barking alerted Kai to movement in the shadowed preparation area. A hooded figure hunched over the main cooking vessel, sprinkling powder across tomorrow's base broth. Stop! Kai's knife flew into his hand as he leaped over tables. The infiltrator spun, revealing ceremonial markings of the Devourer's cult, partially hidden beneath dwarven clothing. Battle erupted among ladles and cauldrons, the clang of metal and sizzle of spilled preparations creating chaotic percussion. Where the cultists' dagger cut, flesh blackened with spreading corruption. Kai's treated knife countered, severing the magical connection that enabled the spread. Their desperate struggle knocked over storage containers, ingredients scattering across stone floors. When Captain Stonehelm's guards finally secured the area, the damage seemed catastrophic. Hours of preparation ruined, key ingredients contaminated. Yet in the midnight council that followed, Kai found unexpected resolve hardening within. We adjust, he stated simply. The feast continues with what remains. The dawn of the feast day brought both anticipation and necessity, another wave. Curved creatures had attacked in the night, driven back only with significant casualties. As designated hour approached, the hall filled beyond capacity. Factional leaders who hadn't broken bread together in generations sat at common tables, their differences temporarily set aside by shared hunger and curiosity. The serving began, modified. Recipes adapted to available ingredients. First came cleansing broths infused with native minerals that Kai had discovered neutralized minor contamination. Dwarves sipped cautiously, eyes widening as warmth spread through their bodies, muscle aches from endless defensive battles temporarily fading. The main course featured the reclaimed fungi prepared 3 ways, preservation techniques borrowing from different dwarven clan traditions, while incorporating Kai's Chicago training. With each bite, the gathered dwarves felt subtle changes, enhanced vigor, sharpened senses, resistance to the oppressive atmosphere that had been affecting judgment and morale. Halfway through the service, alarm horns blared. A massive breach. had opened in the lower residential quarter. Without command or coordination, the feasting dwarves rose as one body, not in panic, but with unified purpose. The corrupted creatures faced something unexpected. Defenders whose natural dwarven resilience had been temporarily enhanced by Kai's preparations, their stone sense heightened, their familial bonds strengthened rather than fractured by weeks of siege. The battle turned decisively for the first time since the attacks began. Later, as the wounded were treated and defenses repaired, Kai observed something remarkable. Dwarves from opposing factions working together without hesitation, sharing techniques, integrating approaches that had previously been jealously guarded. Master Grimbeard himself approached where Kai leaned exhausted against a wall. The elder's ceremonial armor bore fresh scars from battle, his beard singed at the edges. "Your methods are unorthodox," he admitted gruffly, "but so were those of our greatest ancestors, it seems." He extended a gnarled hand containing a heavy metal object, a key etched with ancient runes. "The archive chamber has been sealed since the first attacks. Perhaps it's time we examined our true history, rather than the comfortable legends we've told ourselves." Tormund joined them, eyes wide at the significance of what was being offered. "The archive contains our oldest records, including those of the founding." Kai accepted the key, feeling its weight in more ways than one. Tomorrow they would delve into historical mysteries, seeking answers about the Devourer's origins in this realm. But tonight had confirmed what he had begun to suspect in the village, tested in Aetheria and proven in Ironhaven. In Eldoria, shared. Meals could build bridges stronger than stone and steel, a power perhaps more threatening to the Devourer than any weapon yet forged. The archive chamber's ancient door groaned open, revealing towering shelves of stone tablets and vellum scrolls bathed in crystal light. Kai spread the recovered documents across a massive table where faction leaders gathered with wary eyes and crossed arms. Outside, the brief unity of battle faded as old rivalries resurfaced despite Ironhaven's temporary reprieve. "These markings match those on the cultist's skin." Kai indicated a series of symbols etched into a crumbling tablet. Nima translated the ancient script, her voice growing more troubled with each word. "The Devourer is no mere beast, but a deity. Of endless consumption that travels between realms when summoned by collective hunger." Captain Stonehelm slammed his fist against the table. "Hunger we have in abundance now. Our outlying farms are lost and supply caravans are intercepted." Representatives from 3 neighboring settlements shifted uncomfortably, their journeys through increasingly dangerous territory evident in their battle-worn appearance. The council chamber became a battlefield of competing strategies. The Elven delegate advocated retreat to defensible forests. The human settlements proposed consolidation of forces. Dwarven traditionalists demanded focusing solely on Ironhaven's protection. Diplomatic tensions peaked during the evening meal, when the Elven representative refused to share bread with the Human Merchant Guild, citing ancient territorial disputes. Kai watched the fragile alliance crumbling before it formed, until inspiration struck. He prepared a simple dish for each delegation, using their traditional methods, but incorporating ingredients from all territories, subtle combinations that honored differences while creating new harmonies. As delegates cautiously tasted his creations, the mood shifted. "This uses thornberry spice," the Elven representative noted with surprise, but prepared with the smoking technique of human borderlands. Discussion gradually turned from past grievances to present threats. The council's focus sharpened when a blood-covered messenger staggered in, collapsing into waiting arms. "The Wastes of Khar," he gasped. "Completely fallen, Warlord Blackfang. Flies the Devourer's banner, and marches this way with creatures no warrior has names for." Maps were hastily unrolled as defensive positions were debated. Kai studied the markings, recognizing the strategic importance of a location marked only as the Culinary Citadel, near the center of the realm. "What's this fortress?" he asked. The room fell silent before Master Grimbeard answered gravely. "The oldest repository of food magic in Eldoria, knowledge deemed too dangerous for common use." Lyra's keen eyes narrowed, "and potentially the only place with information about defeating the Devourer permanently." Kai felt Pepper pressing against his leg, the creature's senses already oriented toward this unknown location. As dawn approached, the exhausted council reached consensus. Kai's party would journey to the Culinary Citadel, seeking ancient knowledge, while the allied settlements prepared for the coming storm. Tormund clasped Kai's shoulder as they gathered supplies. They follow. You now, Otherworlder. Whether you sought leadership or not. Kai checked his chef's knife, now adorned with dwarven reinforcement runes. The next phase would take them through territories already claimed by the enemy, a journey with no promise of sanctuary or resupply. The weight of responsibility settled. Across his shoulders alongside his pack, "I'm still just a chef," he murmured, trying not to burn dinner. Nima offered a rare smile. Sometimes the most important revolutions begin in the kitchen. Heat shimmered above cracked earth as Kai's party crested a ridge overlooking the infamous Wastes of Khar. Below stretched a blasted landscape, once fertile plains transformed by magical warfare into crystallized badlands, where twisted vegetation clawed toward the sky like petrified screams. "No natural water for 3 days' travel," Lyra warned, squinting against harsh light reflecting from mineral deposits. "And Warlord Blackfang's patrols hunt anything that moves." They descended into the wastes as sunset painted the landscape, blood red, advancing under cover of darkness between skeletal remains of ancient forests. Pepper scouted ahead, the creature's fur shifting color to match the bleached terrain. Near midnight, the fox-like being returned agitated, ears flat against its skull. Moments later, the ground trembled with approaching hoofbeats. The party barely concealed themselves within a crystallized hollow before riders passed. Mismatched armor, adorned with bone trophies and weapons that pulsed with sickly light. Their mounts were emaciated things with too many legs and exposed ribs that somehow supported massive bodies. "Devourers chosen," Nima whispered, recognizing corrupted runes etched into flesh. They consume the essence of their victims. Dawn found them huddled in an abandoned mining outpost, rationing water while planning their route. Kai prepared a meal from their dwindling provisions, infusing hardtack and jerky with enhancing properties that would stretch their endurance. The preservation techniques he'd perfected in Ironhaven now meant survival. Their progress through the waste slowed as patrols increased, forcing circuitous routes through more dangerous terrain. On the third day, disaster struck when shifting ground collapsed beneath Tormund, sending him tumbling into a ravine. The dwarf's pained cry brought immediate response, a patrol converging from 2 directions. "No time for rescue and escape," Lyra notched her bow, calculating impossible odds. Unexpected salvation came from below, as strong green hands pulled Tormund into a concealed crevice. The others followed quickly, finding themselves in a crude tunnel system occupied by figures who watched with hostile wariness. Their apparent leader, a massive orc with broken tusks and intricate scars, loomed over Kai. "You smell of strange magics, outsider." Before confrontation escalated, another orc pushed forward, this one bearing fresh wounds and chains still dangling from massive wrists. "Wait, Skullcrusher, I've heard whispers of this one. The otherworld chef who defied the worm priest in Ironhaven." The newcomer studied Kai with unexpected intensity. "They say your food brings strength against corruption." Kai met the orc's gaze steadily. "And you are?" The massive figure thumped his chest. "Grim Blacktooth, until recently honored guest of Warlord Blackfang, for refusing to feed my clan to the Hungry One." Throughout the night, Kai learned of the resistance movement growing among common folk, farmers, miners, and even some warriors who rejected the Devourer's promises. "They offer endless feasting," Grim explained bitterly, "but only after you accept hunger as your permanent companion." Kai prepared a meal from the Resistance's meager stores, carefully stretching bland roots and suspicious meat into something that brought momentary brightness to exhausted eyes. Grim watched with professional interest, his own fingers moving in unconscious mimicry of Kai's techniques. "You were a cook among your people," Kai realized. The orc's laugh held no humor. "A warrior who enjoyed flavor beyond bloody meat, weakness, according to our warlord." By morning, uneasy alliance had formed between Kai's party and the resistance cells. With Grim reluctantly guiding them, they charted a path through territory too dangerous for Blackfang's patrols. toward the distant mountains where the Culinary Citadel waited, guarded by secrets and power that might turn the tide against the spreading hunger. The journey's final leg forced them up treacherous mountain passes, where thin air burned lungs and narrow paths crumbled beneath exhausted feet. 7 days of careful rationing had left them gaunt but determined as they crested the final ridge. Collective gasps escaped parched lips at the sight below, a massive fortress of impossible architecture, rising from the mountainside like a tiered wedding cake carved from living stone. Crystal spires reflected sunlight in prismatic patterns, while terraced gardens spiraled around central towers. "The Culinary Citadel," Nima whispered reverently. "I never truly believed it existed outside ancient texts." Approaching the immense gates, they found themselves surrounded by silent guardians wielding implements that blurred the line between kitchen tools and weapons, ladles that channeled elemental energy, rolling pins reinforced with battle runes. An elderly woman in immaculate white robes appraised them with clinical detachment. "The outside world rarely finds us," she stated flatly. "Fewer still are permitted entry." Kai stepped forward, meeting her gaze. "The Devourer has returned. We seek knowledge to combat its hunger." Her expression didn't change, but subtle tension rippled through the assembled guards. Another doomsayer claiming ancient threats walk again. Before dismissal became certain, Kai produced his chef's knife, channeling energy through it, as he'd learned in desperate moments. Vibrant light pulsed from the blade, carrying the distinctive aroma of his signature dishes, something the guards clearly recognized from their widening eyes. "Impossible," the elder whispered. "That technique was lost with the 7th Archon." The gates reluctantly opened, revealing interior splendor that defied expectation. Vast kitchens where chefs worked with mathematical precision, gardens growing, impossible ingredients, libraries where culinary texts floated in protective bubbles. Yet tension permeated the wonder. Hushed conversations ceased when they passed, suspicious glances following their progress. They were given quarters but restricted from most areas, while the Citadel's ruling council of master chefs deliberated their fate. On the 3rd day, challenge came in the form of the Citadel champion, a severe woman named Magistra Valen, who entered their chamber flanked by senior students. "If you truly possess the knowledge you claim," she announced, without preamble, "you will prove it in the arena of flavors." The contest parameters were simple yet impossible. Create dishes demonstrating mastery of each elemental aspect using only provided ingredients. Kai studied the sparse selection, intentionally incomplete, missing key components for traditional preparations. The spectacle drew hundreds of Citadel residents to observation galleries surrounding the circular kitchen. As Kai began working, he felt the familiar calm of professional focus descending. Modern techniques from his Chicago training, combined with magical knowledge, gained through harsh survival, molecular understanding married to elemental attunement. Where traditional recipes failed due to missing ingredients, he improvised new methods that accomplished similar results through different pathways. The champion's expression shifted from dismissal to surprise to reluctant respect, as Kai presented creations that honored classical traditions while transcending them. When the final judgment came, the Citadel's masters acknowledged his unconventional mastery with grave nods. "The knowledge you seek lies in our restricted archives," the headmaster announced. "Knowledge that may destroy as easily as save if mishandled, just as the finest knife cuts both bread and flesh with equal ease." Tormund's skeptical snort cut through ceremonial tension. "Meanwhile, armies march while we debate philosophy." The blunt statement crystallized their purpose, reminding all that academic considerations meant little against imminent threat. That night, Nima discovered ancient texts describing the Devourer's previous manifestations and eventual banishment, a ritual requiring specific ingredients from across Eldoria's diverse regions, many now under enemy control. As Kai studied the faded diagrams, the enormity of their task became clear. They must gather components from territories increasingly dominated by corruption, prepare them according to exacting specifications, and return before the Devourers. Power reached its zenith. The simplicity and impossibility of their quest hung in the air like the aroma of a perfectly prepared dish, tantalizing, ephemeral, and absolutely necessary. "The trials of essence are non-negotiable," Magistra Valen's voice echoed through the council chamber, her ornate chef's hat marking her authority among the assembled masters. "No outsider accesses our complete knowledge without proving their fundamental understanding." Despite protests about urgency, the Citadel's traditions proved immovable. Each member of Kai's party would face specialized challenges, testing their affinity for different aspects of food magic. They separated at dawn, each led to mystically constructed environments embodying culinary principles. Kai entered a barren chamber where nothing seemed edible. Stone walls, metal fixtures, not even dust to work with. "The trial of transformation," his guide explained before departing, "create nourishment from that which cannot nourish." Hours passed in frustration until Kai recognized the challenge's true nature. In Eldoria, intention shaped reality when focused through proper technique. Applying principles from both worlds, he began cooking the very essence of his surroundings, transforming inherent properties rather than physical matter. Elsewhere, his companions faced their own trials. Lyra navigated a constantly shifting maze where ingredients appeared and disappeared, testing her adaptability. Tormund endured intense heat that threatened to destroy his creations before completion. Nima balanced preserving tradition while introducing innovation. And Grimm, most surprisingly, demonstrated sophisticated understanding of fermentation processes that impressed even veteran Citadel masters. Pepper alone faced no trial. The creature, already recognized by ancient wards as something beyond normal classification. As daylight faded, alarm bells shattered the Citadel's scholarly quiet. Kai abandoned his near-complete trial, rushing through corridors filled with panicked apprentices. He found the central food stores in chaos, provisions mysteriously spoiling, at accelerated rates, emitting noxious vapors that induced ravenous hunger in those exposed. Without communication, his scattered team converged on the crisis, each applying skills honed through their trials. Nima contained corrupting energies with elven barrier techniques, while Tormund identified sabotaged ventilation systems. Lyra tracked magical residue to its source, a senior archivist now possessed by hunger essence, eyes bulging with unnatural appetite as he performed ritual contamination. The confrontation sparked chaotic battle among shelves of ancient preserves and rare ingredients. Grimm's massive form provided unexpected salvation, the orc demonstrating remarkable restraint as he incapacitated rather than killed the possessed scholar. "Something controls him," Grimm growled, restraining thrashing limbs. "Something that knows we're here." Working together, they contained the immediate threat, but the implications proved more disturbing. Infiltration at the Citadel's highest levels suggested nowhere remained truly safe from the Devourer's influence. The trial masters arrived too late to prevent damage, but witnessed the party's coordinated response with new respect. Perhaps practical experience outweighs theoretical knowledge in these times, Magistra Valen conceded, granting immediate access to the Grand Archive. The massive repository staggered imagination, knowledge collected across centuries cataloguing every aspect of food magic from basic preservation to reality-altering feast rituals. Amidst ancient scrolls, they discovered the comprehensive Codex Alimentarius, the definitive guide to the Devourer banishment ritual. Their momentary elation collapsed upon finding critical sections deliberately destroyed, leaving crucial preparation methods lost to time. The surviving text confirmed their core understanding, while raising terrifying implications. The Devourer gained strength with each realm it consumed, making this manifestation potentially stronger than those previously defeated. As midnight approached, Kai experimented with fragmentary recipes, applying scientific method to magical theory. "We need to understand principles, not just follow instructions," he explained to skeptical masters. "Missing components must be reverse-engineered through systematic testing." Dawn found him still working, surrounded by partial successes and failures, each teaching valuable lessons about the ritual's underlying mechanisms. Outside the Citadel walls, scouts reported growing darkness on the horizon, the Wastes of Khar now fully consumed by the Devourer's advance forces. with mountain approaches soon to follow. Ancient light crystals activated as they descended deeper into the archive's restricted levels, illuminating treasures beyond mere scrolls and books, living plants in stasis fields, preserved specimens defying classification, and interactive illusions demonstrating techniques too dangerous for casual practice. Kai moved methodically through knowledge organized by generations of scholarly chefs, each discovery filling gaps in their understanding of the coming confrontation. The ritual requires perfect balance between 5 elemental aspects, Nima translated. From a brittle manuscript, earth provides foundation, water offers flow, fire transforms, air distributes, and void preserves the pattern. Nearby, Tormund examined mechanical models, demonstrating optimal preparation methods, his craftsman's eye appreciating the precision required. No wonder this knowledge was restricted, he muttered. One miscalculation could channel corruption, rather than banish it. Their research accelerated when Lyra discovered a hidden section activated by ranger tracking signs, a practical guide rather than theoretical text, written by those who performed previous banishments. The components must be gathered at specific phases of maturity, she summarized for the others, and preparation begins before harvest, not after. Most crucial was the fragmentary Codex Alimentarius, a comprehensive ritual guide with maddening gaps where critical sections had been deliberately destroyed. Kai's practical experiments with the archive's teaching tools provided breakthroughs in understanding the ritual's requirements, not just specific ingredients, but the principles behind their selection and preparation. It's like molecular gastronomy, he explained to puzzled companions. Understanding why ingredients behave certain ways lets us substitute or adapt when necessary. Their research night extended into early morning, interrupted when Pepper's agitated barking alerted them to shadowed movement near the archive entrance. Black-clad figures slipped between shelves with practiced stealth, crystal daggers aimed for vulnerable backs. The ensuing battle transformed the scholarly space into chaotic battlefield, priceless knowledge becoming improvised weaponry as Grimm hurled ancient preservation jars with devastating accuracy. Nima's defensive spells shattered display cases, releasing preserved specimens that attacked infiltrators with uncanny precision. Most surprising was Pepper's contribution. The creature, suddenly tripling in size, fox-like features elongating as dormant magic activated in proximity to ancient artifacts. When guards finally secured the archive, the assassination attempt's failure revealed disturbing facts. The infiltrators wore Citadel apprentice robes beneath disguises, confirming corruption had spread throughout even this isolated stronghold. Magistra Valen's expression remained impassive as she examined captured cultists, but her knuckles whitened around her ceremonial ladle. The Devourer's hunger reaches minds before bodies, she acknowledged. We've been compromised far longer than realized. Dawn Council assembled the Citadel's remaining trustworthy masters, alongside Kai's team, confronting bitter reality. They could neither stay to complete research nor delay departure, as mountain passes would soon become impassable. Kai organized their accumulated knowledge into practical expedition plans, identifying 5 crucial ritual components scattered across territories now largely controlled by enemy forces. The midnight bulb from the Wastes of Khar, he listed grimly. Crystal salt from Ironhaven's deepest mines, fire pollen from the spice wilds, essence of Aetheria from the floating markets, and finally, the primal catalyst found only in the Citadel itself. The scale of their task settled across tired shoulders as expedition preparations began, supplies gathered, maps annotated with danger zones, equipment modified for specific harvesting requirements. Throughout, Pepper remained in enlarged form, the creature's transformation seemingly permanent, another mystery in a growing collection. As they prepared to depart, the headmaster presented Kai with a ceremonial chef's coat embroidered with protective runes. "You came seeking knowledge," the ancient chef stated solemnly, "but have given wisdom in return, reminding us that traditions serve life, not the reverse." The morning of departure brought unwelcome news. Scout reports of advance forces already controlling lower mountain passes. Their journey would begin with battle rather than stealth, immediate danger rather than careful planning. Kai adjusted equipment one final time, his transformed chef's knife now recognized as a legendary implementation. The flavor blade last wielded generations ago against similar darkness. Darkness concealed their descent from the Culinary Citadel, mountain paths illuminated only by Nima's subtle magic, dampened to avoid detection. 3 days of cautious travel brought them to the fringes of occupied territory, the once barren wastes now transformed into something more disturbing. A landscape of monstrous fertility, where corrupted vegetation grew with unnatural speed, consuming anything that remained stationary too long. The Devourer's influence reverses here, Grimm explained, slicing through predatory vines that reached for their ankles. Not destruction, but perversion of natural growth. Their target, the rare midnight bulb that bloomed only in starlight, where battlefield blood had soaked the ground, grew in territories now controlled by Grimm's former warlord. Direct approach meant certain failure against overwhelming forces, necessitating alliance with resistance elements scattered throughout the region. Lyra's tracking skills led them to the first hidden camp, starving farmers whose crops had been commandeered, now surviving on what they could scavenge before it became corrupted. Their gaunt faces registered suspicion until Grimm stepped forward, recognized despite his changed appearance. "The one who refused Blackfang's feast," whispered an elder, voice tinged with reverence. "They said the Devourer's priests executed you." That night, Kai prepared food unlike anything the Resistance had eaten in months. Simple staples transformed through his techniques into nourishing meals that restored strength while providing temporary resistance against corruption. As survivors, they ate information flowed freely. Patrol routes, supply lines, locations of other resistance cells. "Blackfang controls through hunger," explained a former caravan guard. "Villages surrender when children start dying, then find themselves feeding." The army, instead, strategic planning consumed the next 3 days, as Kai's team coordinated disparate resistance elements into organized disruption. Tormund designed specialized containers that preserved food despite hostile environment, enabling stockpiling. Grimm reconnected with former clan members, now regretting their loyalty to the warlord, creating internal discord among enemy forces. Most crucial was Kai's development of preservation methods that allowed resistance fighters to operate while consuming minimal supplies, techniques enhanced by ingredients from the Culinary Citadel. Their efforts culminated in synchronized actions across the wastes. Corrupted supply depots mysteriously burned, patrols led into natural hazards, and primary roads rendered temporarily impassable. The resulting chaos forced Blackfang to consolidate forces, creating opportunity to access abandoned battlefields, where the midnight bulb potentially grew. Under starlight, Kai's team navigated the macabre blooming fields, where fallen warriors from generations of conflict had fertilized the soil with their essence. Lyra's sharp eyes identified the distinctive silver-blue glow of their target, bulbous plants with translucent skin, revealing rhythmically pulsing interiors like beating hearts. "They absorb life energy," Nima warned. "Touch them bare-handed, and they'll drain years from your lifespan." The harvesting required precise coordination, Tormund's specially designed tools manipulated from distance, Grimm's strength providing leverage, Nima's magic preserving volatile essences, all while Kai prepared the bulbs according to specifications from the archive. Dawn approached with their precious cargo secured in lined containers when perimeter alarms triggered. Pepper's warning growl moments before mounted figures crested nearby ridges. "Blackfang himself," Grimm snarled, recognizing ornate armor adorned with rival chieftains' bones. Retreat became chaotic flight through corrupted landscape, where every plant and shadow potentially harbored death. Separation became inevitable, as Grimm led pursuing forces away from the others, his massive form disappearing into pulsing vegetation with a dozen warriors in pursuit. Hours later, at the rendezvous point, the others waited with diminishing hope, until the orc emerged from darkness, bloodied but triumphant, carrying additional supplies commandeered from pursuers. With the first ritual component secured, they turned attention northward toward Ironhaven, where the second ingredient waited, in minds now potentially lost to advancing corruption. Throughout their journey, word spread among common folk. Whispers of resistance led by the Otherworld chef and his improbable alliance, bringing hope through nourishment rather than weapons. What had begun as desperate survival transformed gradually into coordinated rebellion, seeds planted in fertile ground, growing stronger with each successful harvest. Ironhaven's magnificent gates hung broken from massive hinges, the entrance cavern beyond, littered with evidence of desperate final defense. Bodies of defenders and attackers alike created macabre obstacles, many partially consumed by something that left precise, almost surgical feeding marks. 3 days too late, Tormund whispered, kneeling beside a fallen clan brother whose beard braids marked him as mountain royalty. Their grim inspection revealed survivors had retreated to lower levels, sealing emergency barriers designed for catastrophic mine collapse. Smart, the dwarf acknowledged grimly. The deeper warrens connect to secondary exits if you know the paths. Finding themselves in a ghost city where every shadow potentially concealed threats, the party established temporary base in a defensible kitchen storehouse. Kai prepared restorative meals from remaining supplies while Tormund studied ancient city maps, plotting their approach to the crystal salt deposits in the deepest mines. These sections were sealed centuries ago. He indicated areas marked with warning runes. My exile came partly from asking too many questions about what lies below. Their descent began through maintenance tunnels bypassing collapsed main passages, each level revealing more disturbing transformation. Fungal growths pulsed along walls, absorbing minerals and exuding sickly luminescence that made torches unnecessary but considerably less comforting. Signs of survivors increased, discarded supplies, defensive barricades, occasional bodies of those who'd fallen defending retreating comrades. The 8th level brought their first encounter with remaining defenders, traumatized dwarves who nearly killed them before recognizing Tormund. "Ironheart lives?" questioned a blood-spattered captain, whose remaining eye widened in disbelief. "The lower forges still stand because of your reinforcement designs." Escorted to a makeshift stronghold where several hundred survivors huddled, they found Master Grimbeard commanding defense with grim efficiency, despite grievous wounds. The creatures came from below, the elder reported between labored breaths. Not attacking but harvesting, taking specific dwarves with almost surgical precision. Defenders described horrors defying classification, entities composed of partially digested victims fused together into collective hunting organisms that absorbed rather than killed, each consumption adding victims' knowledge and skills to the whole. Kai recognized the description from fragmentary warnings in the Codex, direct manifestations of the Devourer's hunger given physical form to collect specific traits. Their mission acquired desperate urgency when Nima identified magical signatures, suggesting the entities specifically targeted masterminers and alchemists, those with knowledge of crystal salt locations and properties. Using Tormund's forbidden maps, they plotted approach through ancient ceremonial passages, bypassing main corridors. These weren't just mines, the dwarf explained, translating inscriptions older than Ironhaven itself. Our ancestors built around existing structures, ritual sites predating dwarven settlement. Their desperate expedition descended past known mine levels into darkness even dwarven eyes struggled to penetrate. Crystalline formations jutted from walls in configurations too, regular for natural formation, their facets reflecting the party's torchlight with hungry intensity. When the main ceremonial chamber finally opened before them, collective breath caught at the spectacle. A cathedral-sized cavern dominated by a crystal altar, surrounded by salt formations of impossible purity and size. The source of the crystal. "Salt," Tormund whispered reverently. Preparation for harvesting halted when ominous squelching echoed through connecting passages, the hunting entities converging on their position with uncanny precision. They sensed the ritual components, Nima warned, magical barriers flaring as she reinforced the chamber entrance. What followed was desperate coordination, Kai and Tormund working frantically to harvest and prepare crystal salt, while others defended their position against horrors defying conventional combat. The entities absorbed traditional attacks, learning and adapting with each encounter, until Kai's specialized cuisine provided temporary advantage, dishes that protected against mental influence while enhancing natural resistances. Grimm's Berserker. Rage proved unexpected salvation. The orc's battle focus channeled through Kai's enhancement food, making him temporarily immune to the creature's absorptive abilities. Their escape came through ancient emergency shafts, as the chamber defenses finally collapsed, pursuing entities merging into increasingly massive composite forms. Reaching Survivor Stronghold with precious cargo secured, they found evacuation, already underway. Grimbeard, having recognized the position, had become indefensible. 2 days later, from vantage point on distant ridge, they watched as Ironhaven's magnificent external architecture imploded, deliberate demolition by retreating. Defenders ensuring the enemy gained no strategic advantage from occupation. The crystal salt, second ritual component, rested securely in specialized containers, but victory felt hollow against such devastating losses. Tormund stood silently watching his ancestral home collapse, shoulders squared despite trembling hands. "We rebuild," he stated with characteristic dwarven certainty. "After we ensure there's a world left to rebuild in." Familiar scents washed over Kai as they crested the final ridge, overlooking the spice wilds. The aromatic symphony that had greeted his first confused moments in Eldoria, now tinged with underlying wrongness that set his teeth on edge. The once vibrant forest pulsed with unnatural energy. Flowering cycles accelerated to continuous bloom, plants competing so aggressively that weaker species were consumed rather than merely overshadowed. "The Devourer's influence corrupts even growth," Nimmer explained, gesturing toward patterns visible only to magical sight. Natural balance replaced by consumption dominance. Their target, fire pollen from specific deep forest blooms, required journeying through territories now disputed between local villages, Lyra's former clan, and cultist harvesting parties stripping valuable resources. Kai's familiarity with the region proved outdated. Landmarks he recognized were transformed, paths overgrown, formerly peaceful areas now contested territories. The small village that first sheltered him had transformed into fortified encampment housing refugees from deeper regions, its inhabitants initially unrecognizing, until an elderly healer gasped, pointing with trembling finger. "The other world." "Chef returns," she announced, triggering ripples of whispered excitement through gathered survivors. That night, village elders shared intelligence about forest conditions, how accelerated growth cycles produced magnificent specimens ultimately, hollow at their core, how animals consuming corrupted plants grew monstrous before imploding from unsustainable metabolisms. "The forest devours itself," concluded the chief hunter grimly, "abundance that ultimately produces nothing." Morning Council established their approach. Lyra would negotiate passage with her former clan, who controlled access to inner regions, where fireflowers bloomed, while Kai's reputation would secure village support for the expedition. The ranger's reunion with her people proved more complex than anticipated. Elders initially hostile until younger hunters stepped forward, describing how her warnings about resource management had proven prophetic as corruption spread. "You saw clearly while we remained blinded by tradition," admitted the clan chief, silver-streaked hair framing ceremonial face markings that matched Lyra's own. "Perhaps wisdom speaks through unexpected voices." With Tormund and Grimm remaining to reinforce village defenses against increasing cultist raids, the expedition party ventured into deeper forest regions where crimson canopies trapped sunlight in blood-tinged illumination. Navigation required Lyra's expertise, and Pepper's enhanced senses as conventional landmarks disappeared beneath aggressive overgrowth. They located the first fireflower bloom on the third day, magnificent spiral-petaled blossoms whose centers contained pollen sacs that periodically ignited in momentary flame without consuming the plant itself. Harvesting required precise timing, collecting during the millisecond between ignition and combustion when magical properties reached maximum potency. Their careful work attracted unwelcome attention as cultist harvesting parties converged from 3 directions drawn by the distinctive light flashes accompanying successful collection. The resulting 3-way confrontation transformed peaceful glade into chaotic battlefield. Kai's party defending their position against cultists, while massive predators attracted by combat sought opportunistic meals from any available source. Salvation came unexpectedly when Lyra's clan emerged from surrounding forest, their hunters coordinating with village defenders in practiced maneuvers that suggested recent alliance. With harvested pollen secured in specially prepared containers, their extraction became strategic retreat through territories increasingly controlled by unified forest dwellers who had set aside generations of conflict against common threat. The night before departure, Lyra received formal restoration of clan markings in ceremony that acknowledged both her vindication and separate path. "You belong to something larger now," her clan chief acknowledged, completing the ritual. "But carry our strength with you." Their return journey revealed encouraging developments: coordinated resistance against cultist incursions, communication networks established between formerly isolated communities, strategic resource management implemented across territorial boundaries. What had begun as Kai's desperate survival in alien environment had catalyzed connections now growing into organized opposition. With 3 ritual components secured, they turned attention toward greatest challenge yet, the floating markets of Aetheria, now reportedly under blockade by forces loyal to the Devourer. Kai's pack contained possessions gathered across their journey, implements and ingredients from territories spanning Eldoria, physical reminders of connections forged through shared purpose, transcending racial and cultural boundaries. Most precious was his original chef's knife, now enhanced through dwarven craftsmanship, elven enchantment, orcish battle blessing, and ranger practical modifications, a weapon and tool embodying the alliance they represented. "The knife feels different," he commented to Nima as they prepared for travel. "Heavier but somehow more balanced." The elf smiled knowingly. "All meaningful connections add weight while providing support. True for blades as for alliances." The floating platforms of Aetheria appeared through breaks in the cloud cover, their massive air bladders shimmering with the essential magic Kai's ritual desperately needed. Steel cables creaked under tension as corrupted merchant airships formed, a choking blockade around the once-free market. 3 patrol routes, each timed 15 minutes apart, Lyra observed through Tormund's crafted spyglass. The dwarven smith had outdone himself. The makeshift gliders assembled from scavenged materials looked impossibly fragile against the vast sky, yet the reinforced struts bore the subtle marks of master craftsmanship. Kai swallowed hard, the ground already too distant for comfort as they prepared to launch from the cliffside. His knuckles whitened around the cooking knife secured at his belt, the edge honed to molecular perfection, capable of slicing the toughest ingredients or enemy flesh with equal precision. "The approach angle must be exact," Tormund instructed, squinting against the harsh winds. "Too steep and we'll crash into the market's underside. Too shallow and we'll be spotted before reaching the shadow zone." Nima's enchantments shimmered across the glider's canvas surfaces, temporarily bending light around them during the critical approach vector. They would have exactly one chance. The moment between decision and action stretched like heated sugar, then snapped as they launched into empty air. Wind howled past Kai's ears as the glider caught thermal currents rising from the valley below. From this vantage, the true devastation of the Devourer's influence became horrifyingly apparent. Vast swathes of forest stripped bare by harvest teams, the grey pallor of corruption spreading in concentric rings from supply routes. The blockade grew larger with each passing moment, airship crews visible on deck. Some wore the telltale vacant expressions of those who had consumed tainted food, their movements mechanical and synchronized as they operated ballistae and flamethrowers. The wind shifted treacherously, nearly sending Kai's glider into a death spiral before he compensated with desperate weight adjustments. Pepper, secured in a specially designed harness, whimpered softly against his chest. "Almost there," he whispered, more to himself than his companion. The first glider, Lyra's, disappeared beneath Aetheria's floating underbelly, followed by Grimm's substantially reinforced craft. Tormund and Nima banked sharply to approach from different angles, dividing the attention of any observers. Kai aimed for the shadow of a massive storage platform, the darkened recess their designated assembly point. The landing came harder than Planned canvas tearing as the glider slammed into metal grating. Kai rolled to absorb impact, protecting Pepper with his body as momentum carried them into stacked supply crates. Before he could regain his footing, rough hands seized his shoulders, then immediately released as a familiar voice whispered, "Cutting it close, aren't you, chef?" The woman who stepped from shadows wore a patchwork captain's coat adorned with mechanical enhancements, her left eye replaced by a brass telescopic apparatus that whirred softly as it focused. "Captain Thorne," she introduced herself with an ironic bow. "No relation, I'm told, though the coincidence is delicious." The Sky pirate crew materialized from concealed positions, a dozen hard-eyed survivors who had opposed the blockade from the beginning. "Merchants Guild offered me triple standard rates to join their little arrangement," Captain Thorne explained, as she led them through maintenance tunnels beneath Aetheria's market floor. "I explained that some principles aren't for sale. They took exception to my position." She tapped her mechanical eye meaningfully. "Now I take exception to their breathing." The rendezvous with the other team members came with mixed news. Grim had secured access to maintenance hatches leading to the central air bladders, but Nima's contact in the Aetherian Arcane Academy had been arrested the previous day, their access to extraction tools suddenly compromised. "We adapt," Kai stated with the confidence born from countless kitchen crises. "Show me the bladder composition." The modified extraction became a battlefield operation. Captain Thorne's crew created diversions across the market, while Kai's team ascended narrow, maintenance ladders toward the enormous gas chambers. Halfway up, alarm bells shattered their stealth. A patrol had discovered one of the gliders. "Faster," Grim growled, taking point position as they climbed toward the collection point. The massive reinforcement struts surrounding the air bladders vibrated with tension as the entire structure adjusted to wind patterns. At the designated extraction point, Kai faced an immediate crisis. The bladder membrane was twice as thick as intelligence had suggested, requiring modification to their collection tools. Tormund's hands worked feverishly, reshaping metal components, as Nima reinforced them with protective enchantments. Below, the sounds of combat echoed through the maintenance shafts. The extraction device punctured the bladder membrane with surgical precision, azure essence streaming into specialized containment vessels. "Movement at 3 o'clock, Lyra warned, bow already drawn and aimed at the approaching patrol platform. The ensuing battle transformed the narrow maintenance gantry into nightmarish terrain. One misstep meant a fatal plunge through open sky. Corrupted guards moved with unnatural coordination, their attacks synchronized to drive the companions apart. Kai fought with his chef's knife in one hand and a heavy skillet in the other, the improvised combat style surprisingly effective in the confined space. When the last guard fell, they faced a new problem. The patrol platform was separating from the maintenance gantry, taking their escape route with it. "Jump!" Captain Thorne shouted from the platform's edge, already pulling away. With the essence container secured to his back, Kai made an impossible leap across growing emptiness, fingertips barely catching the platform's edge as Grim and Tormund hauled him aboard. The sky erupted with combat as Captain Thorne's airship emerged from concealment, exchanging cannon fire with blockade vessels while providing covering fire for their escape. "This isn't just about commerce anymore," the captain observed. As they watched Aetheria recede in the distance, other market platforms now visibly separating into factions, those resisting the Devourer's influence and those embracing promised abundance. "They're dividing the very sky itself." The essence container hummed with potential against Kai's back, the final component secured but at tremendous cost. Captain Thorne's vessel had suffered critical damage during their escape, limping toward a hidden sanctuary with blockade ships in pursuit. The battle for Aetheria continued behind them, but their path now led directly to the Culinary Citadel, where the ultimate confrontation would begin. As bandages were applied and damage assessed, Kai caught Lyra's meaningful glance toward the horizon, where distant lights signaled allies joining the resistance. The isolation of their early journey had transformed into a movement spanning the realm, each victory inspiring others to reject the false promise of endless consumption. The Devourer's forces were gathering, but so too were those who would stand against hunger without satisfaction, appetite without purpose, consumption without creation. Smoke rose from multiple points across the Culinary Citadel's outer perimeter as Kai's party approached through concealed mountain passes. The fortress kitchen laboratory, once an impregnable sanctuary of culinary knowledge, now stood as the final battlefield. Devourer cultists had launched their assault the previous night. Their forces, strengthened by corrupted beasts and mercenaries, promised endless feasts in the new world order. The southeastern buttress is still holding, Tormund observed, studying the fortifications with a craftsman's eye. The main gates have been breached, but the inner sanctum remains secure. The companions made their final approach under cover of a blinding snowstorm. Whether natural or conjured by the citadel's defenders remained unclear. Grim moved ahead as scout, his massive frame somehow ghosting between snowdrifts with practiced silence. The reception at the hidden postern gate was tense, haggard defenders initially mistaking them for enemy infiltrators until Nima displayed the Archmage's token. Inside, the citadel's grandeur had transformed into martial functionality. Great halls once dedicated to culinary experimentation now housed wounded defenders and displaced refugees. Master chefs worked alongside battle medics, their skillful hands repurposing cooking techniques for wound treatment and pain management. "We expected you 3 days ago," Grandmaster Ambrose stated without preamble, his once immaculate ceremonial robes now stained with blood and soot. "The ritual chamber has been prepared according to the ancient texts, but our outer defenses cannot hold much longer." The chamber, deep within the mountain's heart, stood ready, precisely arranged workstations. Surrounding a central altar-like preparation table, ancient ventilation shafts carved through solid rock maintained perfect temperature and humidity while circulating essential energies. Time compressed into frantic activity as the party unpacked their precious ingredients. The midnight bulb pulsed with absorbed starlight, requiring delicate handling to prevent premature release of its volatile essences. Crystal salt from Ironhaven's depths refracted magical energies in precise wavelengths necessary for the ritual's success. Fire pollen from the spice wilds glowed with potential, each grain containing combustive power that could enhance flavors or incinerate the unwary. The essence of Aetheria proved most challenging. Its container required constant rotation to prevent solidification at room temperature. "The ritual framework is sound," Nima confirmed after reviewing ancient texts, alongside the Citadel's arcane specialists. "But the execution requires simultaneous preparation of 7 distinct dishes, each influencing different aspects of the banishment." The work division emerged organically, Kai taking central responsibility for the primary binding agent that would harmonize the separate preparations. Lyra's precision and steady hands made her perfect for the delicate fire pollen integration. Grim's unexpected palate sensitivity allowed him to monitor fermentation processes requiring split-second timing. Tormund established a makeshift forge. In one corner, crafting specialized tools as needs emerged. Nima coordinated with Citadel mages, their combined enchantments stabilizing volatile reactions between opposing ingredients. Pepper moved between stations, the creature's enhanced senses detecting minute imbalances invisible to human perception. The rhythm of preparation established itself, blade against cutting board, the bubble of precisely heated reductions, the whisper of ingredients folded into mixtures. For precious moments, Kai could almost imagine himself back in Chicago's high-pressure kitchens, rather than orchestrating ritual magic with apocalyptic stakes. The illusion shattered as the chamber shook violently. Enemy sappers had detonated, their explosives against the Citadel's foundations. "Structural damage in the East Wing," a messenger reported breathlessly. "The library barricades are failing." Crisis struck in the preparation's 4th hour, when the Aetherian essence destabilized, its container developing hairline fractures from the continued bombardment. "Containment failure imminent," Nima warned, magical sensors detecting the buildup of pressure. Kai's mind raced through alternatives. The ritual required stable essence, but their remaining supply couldn't survive transfer to another vessel without specialized equipment. "We modify the ritual," he decided. The same instinct that had salvaged countless service disasters in Chicago kitchens now applied to magical catastrophe. Instead of stabilizing the essence externally, we'll incorporate it immediately into a binding emulsion. The adaptation required rebalancing every other component, increasing fire pollen concentration in some preparations while diluting crystal salt solutions in others. The team moved with practiced coordination, no wasted motion or redundant effort as they implemented Kai's revisions. Outside their sanctuary, battle raged through the Citadel's halls. Grandmaster Ambrose himself had taken command of the remaining battle chefs, their culinary magic transmuted into deadly combat techniques. Specialized distillations blinded enemy forces with caustic vapors, while precisely fermented compounds created controlled explosions that collapsed passages against advancing cultists. Final integration in 3 minutes, Kai announced, monitoring temperature gradients across the central mixture. Preparations 3 and 5 require simultaneous addition, or the reaction will cascade prematurely. The chamber door burst inward, admitting wounded defenders in retreat before a wave of corrupted attackers. The battle spilled into the ritual space, defenders forming a desperate perimeter around the preparation stations. Grimm abandoned his station to reinforce the defenders, his massive frame becoming a living barricade, while Tormund hastily completed the abandoned fermentation monitoring. Cultists penetrated the defensive line, their corrupted flesh resistant to conventional weapons. One reached for the crystal salt preparation before Lyra's arrow pinned his hand to the wall. Another knocked over a critical reduction before Nima's spell froze him mid-motion. "Keep working!" Kai shouted above the chaos, hands never stopping their precise movements despite the battlefield erupting around him. The culminating moment approached. 7 distinct preparations requiring simultaneous combination in specific sequence. The defenders couldn't hold much longer, their ranks thinning with each passing minute. With no alternatives, Kai made a desperate adjustment. "New plan," he called out, voice cutting through battle noise with kitchen-honed authority. "Complete." Combination now accelerated reaction. The change meant dangerously unstable interim stages, but waiting meant certain failure. The companions executed the accelerated combination with flawless precision. Each component introduced in perfect sequence, despite swords clashing meters away. The ritual mixture pulsed with gathering power, elements that should reject each other, harmonizing under Kai's guidance. As the final component merged into the whole, a shockwave of culinary magic exploded outward, harmless to untainted flesh, but agonizing to corrupted attackers. The chamber cleared momentarily as cultists retreated from the unexpected counterattack. "It's ready," Kai announced, surveying their creation. 7 distinct dishes arranged around a central binding element that pulsed with gathered power. But the ritual requires representatives from each of Eldoria's races to consume their corresponding dishes simultaneously. The timing couldn't have been worse. The Citadel's external defenses had completely collapsed. The bulk of the enemy, force now converging on their position. The ground trembled continuously, no longer from sappers' explosives, but from something massive approaching through conquered sections of the fortress. The companions exchanged glances, the unspoken truth hanging between them. They had created the means of banishment, but time had run out for the ritual itself. Through the shattered doorway came an unexpected sight. Grandmaster Ambrose leading a desperate final charge, accompanied by representatives from across Eldoria who had fought their way to the ritual chamber. "The feast awaits," the Grandmaster declared grimly, blood streaming from a head wound. "Let us hope your preparations are worth the price paid to reach them." The ritual chamber transformed into the final line of defense, as barricades materialized from broken furniture and fallen stonework. Defenders distributed themselves among the remaining entrances, while Kai arranged the ritual dishes for immediate consumption. "Each must be consumed in its entirety," he instructed the assembled representatives. "The flavors will be intense, possibly overwhelming, but the magic requires complete ingestion." The dwarf elder, blood-crusted and grim, nodded understanding. The elven mystic whispered final prayers. The human merchant captain flexed her, remaining good hand. The orc tribal leader adjusted ceremonial paint applied over fresh wounds. Other representatives, halfling, gnome, and beings Kai couldn't identify, took positions around the circular table, each before their designated dish. Time seemed to crystallize into perfect focus as the ritual began, each participant consuming, their preparation in synchronized motion. The reactions manifested immediately, auras of distinctive energy surrounding each representative as the magical ingredients activated. Dwarf stone sense expanded beyond its natural limits, detecting structural weaknesses throughout the citadel. Elven life magic flowed into damaged plants and herbs, creating unexpected allies from decorative gardens. Human adaptability magnified, battle instincts sharpening beyond normal capability. The defensive perimeter solidified as these enhanced. Abilities came into play, the defenders suddenly fighting with coordination that seemed supernatural. Outside the immediate ritual space, the battle reached fever pitch. Corrupted creatures that had once been recognizable races now moved with hive-mind precision, sacrificing themselves without hesitation to clear paths for stronger units. Behind them came specialized cultists wearing grotesque ceremonial garb, fashioned from preserved food and rotting organic matter. "Something's changing," Lyra warned from her position near a partially collapsed window. The sky above the citadel had darkened unnaturally, clouds swirling in patterns that defied wind currents and natural formation. At the ritual table, the participants completed their consumption, the magical energies building toward critical threshold as the ancient texts had predicted. Kai monitored each reaction, making minute adjustments through specially prepared condiments that stabilized fluctuating energies. "Final harmonization approaching," Nima confirmed, arcane instruments tracking the building resonance. The moment, extended balance teetering between success and catastrophic failure as opposing energies sought equilibrium. Then, completion. A column of pure culinary magic erupted from the table, shooting upward through specially designed channels in the citadel's architecture. The energy beam penetrated the unnatural storm clouds, momentarily clearing the sky to reveal normal sunlight. Victory seemed imminent until the beam twisted unnaturally, its direction reversing as something immense exerted overwhelming force. The energy conduit became a pathway, a terrible connection between realms. Through it emerged the Devourer, not as cultist prophecies had depicted, but as a writhing mass of partially digested matter, countless half-recognizable forms fused into a singular grotesque entity. Limbs from different species protruded at impossible angles. Eyes blinked independently across its surface. Mouths opened and closed in unpredictable patterns, each emitting different voices, speaking fragments of interrupted thoughts. The entity crashed through the citadel's central dome, collapsing ancient stonework under its impossible weight. Its massive form flowed like viscous liquid, consuming defenders and cultists alike with equal indifference. The ritual failed, Grandmaster Ambrose whispered, horror etching deeper lines into his weathered face. "No," Kai countered, studying the creature's movements with analytical intensity. "It worked exactly as described. The banishment ritual made the Devourer manifest physically in our realm, rather than influencing it through proxies. Now it can be defeated permanently." The insight provided little immediate comfort as the manifestation tore through the citadel's remaining defenses, its many mouths consuming everything in its path. Stone, metal, flesh, and magic alike disappeared into its mass, adding to its grotesque bulk. The companions regrouped in the comparative safety of the ritual chamber, its ancient wards temporarily holding against the chaos outside. The texts mentioned a vulnerability, Nima reminded them, frantically searching through damaged scrolls. Something about essence rejection during physical manifestation. Kai's mind raced through the ancient recipes, connecting disparate elements into coherent theory. "It's consuming indiscriminately," he realized aloud, but indiscriminate consumption means no selectivity, no ability to reject harmful components. A desperate plan formed as he surveyed their remaining supplies. The companions split into strike teams, each targeting different sections of the citadel with specific objectives. Tormund led a group to the foundry levels, preparing specialized delivery systems for Kai's concoctions. Lyra and Grim organized the remaining defenders into distraction units, drawing the Devourer's attention to predetermined points while avoiding direct engagement. Nima coordinated with surviving mages to establish magical corridors through the increasingly unstable structure. Kai worked with manic intensity, preparing concentrated versions of the ritual components with crucial modifications, each designed to target different aspects of the Devourer's unstable physiology. "These won't banish it," he explained while working, "but they'll disrupt its cohesion long enough for the final application." The plan unfolded across the devastated citadel. Teams deploying Kai's preparations against specific sections of the entity's amorphous body. Where the compositions made contact, violent reactions occurred, portions of the Devourer temporarily losing cohesion as incorporated matter rejected the whole. The entity recognized the threat belatedly, its countless eyes focusing on a single target with sudden unified purpose. Dozens of mouths spoke simultaneously in perfect coordination. The otherworld chef must be consumed first. Its massive form changed direction with surprising speed, flowing through obstacles toward the ritual chamber, where Kai completed the final preparation. The timing would be impossibly precise, the chamber's wards weakening with each passing second as the entity's corrupting influence seeped through ancient stone. Lyra appeared at the chamber's remaining doorway, bow drawn and expression grim. "It's coming directly for you, we can't redirect it anymore." Kai nodded without looking up from his work, hands moving with practiced efficiency despite the stakes. "Is everyone in position for the final sequence?" "Yes, but..." Lyra's objection died as the chamber wall exploded inward, the Devourer's writhing mass pouring through the breach like living nightfall. In the chaos that followed, the companions executed their final desperate gambit, not to destroy the entity through force, but to use its own nature against it. Kai stood his ground before the advancement, the culmination of his culinary journey in Eldoria, contained in a single small vial. As tendrils of corrupted matter reached for him, he raised the vial in silent challenge. The gambit worked, dozens of mouths opened simultaneously, the entity's fundamental nature compelling it to consume the challenger and his creation together. The moment Kai disappeared into the Devourer's mass, coordinated attacks struck from every surviving corner of the citadel, Tormund's delivery systems launching precise payloads, Nima's magical corridors channeling focused energy, Grim and Lyra leading physical strikes against temporarily vulnerable points. Within the entity's churning innards, Kai experienced multiple realities simultaneously, the physical sensation of dissolution alongside impossible visions of other worlds the Devourer had visited and consumed. Through sheer will, he maintained, his grip on the vial until reaching the entity's core, a perfect moment of terrible understanding as he perceived the Devourer's true nature. Hunger without purpose, consumption without nourishment, appetite without end. With his final conscious act, Kai shattered the vial against what passed for the entity's central nervous system. The reaction began instantly, complex compounds interacting with the entity's unstable chemistry. From outside, witnesses described the Devourer seeming to freeze in place before emitting a sound beyond conventional hearing, a vibration felt in marrow rather than detected by ears. The entity's cohesion failed catastrophically, its massive form collapsing into constituent components that rapidly lost animation. When the companions reached the epicenter of the collapse, they found an impossible sight, Kai unconscious but alive within a perfect sphere of untouched space, preserved by culinary magic beyond their understanding. Dawn broke over the ruined citadel, golden light revealing the true extent of devastation and triumph. The Devourer's physical form had decomposed into inert matter, the corrupting influence neutralized by Kai's final preparation. Survivors emerged from hiding places throughout the shattered fortress, disbelieving their salvation, yet grateful beyond words. Kai regained consciousness as skilled healers worked to reverse the partial dissolution he had experienced within the entity. His first lucid words surprised no one who knew him. Did anyone salvage those herbs from the East Garden? They'd be perfect for a recovery broth. The following days blurred into exhausting recovery efforts. The Culinary Citadel, damaged but not destroyed, became a rallying point for representatives from every corner of Eldoria. Warriors arrived alongside farmers, scholars beside hunters, all bringing reports of the Devourer's influence receding across the realm. Corrupted creatures returned to natural behavior patterns. Blighted lands showed first signs of renewal. The companions found themselves elevated to legendary status, despite their protests. Their journey from strangers to saviors now immortalized in stories spreading across Eldoria. 1 week after the final battle, Grandmaster Ambrose called for a celebration unlike any in living memory. A feast of heroes to honor those who had fallen and those who had survived. Not merely a meal, he announced to the gathered assembly, but a reaffirmation of life and connection, the very antithesis of what the Devourer represented. Kai insisted on leading the preparation, despite his incomplete recovery. Cooking brought me to this world, he reminded concerned friends. It seems appropriate that cooking should mark this new beginning. The feast preparation became a unifying activity as surviving chefs from diverse traditions worked alongside volunteers from every race and region. Traditional rivals shared techniques developed over generations. Former enemies collaborated on complex dishes requiring multiple specialized skills. Throughout the massive effort, Kai moved with quiet authority, no longer the confused outsider but a master connecting disparate culinary traditions into harmonious whole. During quiet moments away from the kitchens, the companions found time for reflection. Lyra and Kai's relationship had deepened beyond professional respect into something neither rushed to define but both treasured. Tormund received word that Ironhaven's ruling council had formally revoked his exile, though the dwarf seemed in no hurry to return. "My forge travels with me now," he explained, patting the specialized tools at his belt. "And my friends need quality equipment for whatever comes next." Grim had become an unexpected diplomat, his battlefield alliance with former enemies transforming into a role as mediator between orc tribes and neighboring settlements. Nima divided her time between healing the wounded and documenting their journey. "The most important culinary expedition in recorded history," she insisted. Pepper had undergone the most startling transformation, the creature now demonstrating unmistakable sentience and rudimentary speech abilities, suggesting magical evolution accelerated by exposure to concentrated magical food. The feast itself transcended mere celebration, becoming something approaching sacred ritual. As twilight painted the mountains in amber hues, tables arranged in concentric circles filled with representatives from every corner of Eldoria. At the center stood a singular table where the companions were joined by those who had contributed most directly to victory. Grandmaster Ambrose rose to speak before the assembled multitude, his voice carrying clearly across the expectant gathering. "We faced consumption without purpose, appetite without end," he intoned. "Today we answer with creation shared freely, nourishment given in friendship, flavors experienced in community." The meal unfolded as carefully orchestrated magic, each course designed to honor specific aspects of their shared journey. Dishes from the Spice Wilds celebrated initial survival and discovery. Ironhaven specialties acknowledged perseverance. Through Siege, Aetherian cloud confections commemorated desperate aerial battles. Throughout the feast, participants found themselves experiencing more than flavors. Brief, vivid impressions of crucial moments during the conflict transferred through Kai's culinary magic. As the final course concluded, a curious phenomenon manifested above the gathering. The air shimmered with culinary essence, not as random energies but as deliberate pattern. Within the shimmering display, Kai recognized Chicago's skyline briefly superimposed over Eldoria's mountains. "A thinning between worlds," Nima whispered, recognition dawning. "The same phenomenon that brought you here." The moment presented an unmistakable choice, a potential pathway home after months in this magical realm. Kai felt the pull of his former life, memories of modern conveniences and familiar routines suddenly vivid after so long away. Yet looking around at his companions, at Lyra's concerned expression, Tormund's resigned nod, Grim's uncharacteristic emotion, Nima's tear-filled eyes, and Pepper's distressed whimpers, he understood that choices were rarely simple. Before he could speak, the Grand Master approached with ceremonial gravitas. "The ancient texts spoke of a cycle," he explained quietly. "The Devourer crosses between realms, consuming without satisfaction. It seems the counterbalance also moves between worlds, creation that nourishes both body and spirit." The shimmering gateway pulsed, its stability clearly temporary. "Your knowledge helped save our world," Lyra said simply, her hand finding his. "But your journey here was never about obligation." Kai's decision crystallized not from dramatic revelation, but from simple truth he had known since surviving the entity's interior. His place was wherever he could create, rather than merely consume, wherever shared meals brought connection rather than transaction. The Chicago skyline faded from the shimmering display as he stepped back from the gateway, choosing his new home with clear purpose. "Besides," he said with a smile that banished the gathering's tension, "I've barely scratched the surface of Eldoria's culinary potential. We have new fusion cuisines to develop, cross-cultural techniques to explore." Gazing across the feast that united former enemies in shared celebration, Kai recognized the true power that had defeated the Devourer. Not merely magical ingredients or clever preparations, but the fundamental truth that breaking bread together creates bonds stronger than any hunger. As stars appeared above the mountains, Kai raised his glass in toast, surrounded by companions who had become family through shared struggle and triumph. To appetites satisfied, to hunger with purpose, to meals that build rather than consume. Across the gathering, glasses rose in response, a constellation of lights mirroring the stars above, each representing a story connected to the unlikely battle chef who had helped save their world through the simple, profound power of cooking, with purpose and love. The ancient cartridge holds many secrets, but for how many playthroughs longer? I challenge you to share this quest with your party members. Subscribe to prevent the dreaded game over screen, because in the world of 16-bit adventures, there's always a secret ending after the credits roll.